Welcome back to the Christian View. One of the discussions that is prevalent in America today is the conversation of the topic of racism. And Dr. Swain, we just want to ask you, as a black woman who, throughout your journey, I'm sure has had some experience, whether it be covert or overt, with racism, do you kind of feel, or is it possible that there are some actions that take place in media and some of our leaders jump on board more to make a story, or is it more so to really address the issues at hand?
Well, I mean, that's a big question that you asked me. And one of the things that I have never felt handicapped because of my race, and so like racism has not been a huge issue for me. And a lot of times today when we talk about racism, it's usually the liberals saying it's the conservatives. I've seen far more what I would call racism among liberals, people believing, you know, that minorities are incapable of doing certain things. And I think, what was the George Bush that said it was the bigotry of soft expectations?
Yes.
Or I may have gotten that wrong. But I think that what we're seeing take place today in America is that there are politicians and leaders who try to keep people divided. And so they're stirring the pot of racial unrest.
Systematic.
And in academia, people will tell you that blacks can't be racist or minorities can't be racist. Only white people can be racist because you have to have power to be racist. That's a theory that we learn in college. And that's crazy. Especially today, you know, when you have a black president, you've had 2 black attorney generals, but independently of that, racism can be exercised by anyone of any group. We see it all the time.
Yes, we do. One thing that really broke me in your book, it just hit me hard. You said that you used to fantasize when you were a little girl that you were not a woman, you were not black, and you were not poor. So did you feel the sting of racism growing up? Do you remember that?
It had nothing my fantasies had nothing to do with racism.
Okay.
So I'll tell you all about my fantasies.
Within reason.
You tell.
When I was small, and okay, I'll put some race in it. And I was being bused to my school, bused on the bus. I used to, you know, sometimes I would put my head down and I would enter this fantasy world where I was this rich white kid named David.
Oh, David.
And he was filthy
I read
rich,
that.
just like Richie Rich. He was Richie Rich, and so, but I didn't realize until Toni Morrison said, even as a child, you were imagining the best you could be in America.
There you go.
Yes.
I mean, she didn't mean it like,
Yeah.
you know how she meant it. But yeah, I mean, I had this fantasy world, but I think that was God's way of helping me to have empathy for other people. No, I think it had to do with having empathy for other people because, like, I do have empathy for the poor whites in Appalachia because I grew up in poverty, and when I was working in the nursing homes and working in a garment factory and I've sold things from door to door, I worked alongside a lot of other people that were poor and they were white, and so I don't think, you know, one group necessarily has the corner on poverty. And I hate to say this, but as I was, you know, struggling, and the people that helped me the most in my journey, they happened to be white. It was like, because I was poor, the members of the black middle class, they didn't have time for anyone like me. I was not a teacher's daughter. I was not the daughter of anyone important, and so they had no interest in me. And so the mentors that I've had throughout my life have been conservative. And I was told 30 years ago that I should be a Republican, and I thought, never. Are you?
Never say never, right?
Right.
Right.
But Carol, you know, so one of the things that we've been seeing a lot is like Stone Mountain. We live around here, and they're saying we've got to just eradicate Stone Mountain, and it's like we're trying to erase history that what happened didn't happen, but it did happen. How come we can't embrace?
Wait a minute.
I mean, it's not right, but it happened.
Well, let's talk about what's really taking place. I don't know how many of you all, or how many in your viewers have read George Orwell's 1984. And that was about revising history. And what we find with the language and what we find, easy now because so many books are electronic, that there's an effort to just erase history, and then you can create anything you want to create. And it's very dangerous. We do need to know the past, to remember the past, to be able to avoid mistakes in the future.
Correct. We learn from our past.
We learn.
We don't need to embrace those practices from the past, but go back and start destroying historical monuments. We would have to go to Washington, D.C., get rid of the Washington Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial. We'd have to get rid of all of them because they own slaves, so we're going to really just address one faction of it. We have to look at it from the big picture.
We'd have to rename Washington. If you think about it, Washington himself owned slaves. So I don't think I agree with you. History is history, and we can learn from our history, and our kids need to understand our history. But we need to get past that and focus on the real issues.
Exactly.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with Carol Swain. Thank you.